actor, a cracker, whatever, freaker fracker.
Open up, Colorado. It's 420. Time to grind and burn.
This is not your son's stoner show.
Open up. Open up. Open up.
And now, broadcasting live from the Dink Studios at 3835 Elm Street in Denver, Colorado. It's the Grind and Burn, a podcast from the Cannabis Community Project. There we go. Folks, that is much, much better. I want to tell you about a wonderful deal tonight. Don't get left out on the CCP store. Dairy Berry's recording studio, located in Arvada, Colorado, is your local recording studio with affordable rates. Mark is well experienced and will make your show, music, or any audio you have sound great.
Under pressure, extreme.
Cushly Organic Products eliminates odor. And it's organic and it's non-toxic. I use it myself, and many of my close friends and family use it. www.cushly.com.
The 6 degrees of Cushly. Yeah, it's amazing.
Thank you, Cannapreneurs. Thank you once again for joining me for another great week in CCP. This week we have Abe from THC Legal Group talking to us about IP protection, intellectual property, patents, copyrights, trademarks, trade secrets, everything you need to know if you're thinking about getting involved in the cannabis industry from a product or manufacturer, or I guess even just from an idea standpoint. You might want to learn about some of the legalities of getting involved in cannabis. And yes, I did ask him the question that I do believe to be the number one asked question when it comes to patents and cannabis issues. I asked him directly, does the U.S. government hold a U.S. patent on anything in cannabis? And is it even possible to patent a plant? You're going to want to hear what he said about that. Very interesting stuff. I don't even really know what to say this week from a business standpoint about basics because there's so much going on in America right now. It's the week of mayhem, the month of mayhem, the year, the decade of mayhem. Feels like things are progressively getting more accelerated and a little more intense. I mean, back-to-back cop shootings and massacres and everything that just seems to be not good stuff for the outlook and stability of our society. I'm not sure what role I play in that. I'm not sure what role I play as a citizen. I'm not sure what professional role I play as a podcaster. These are trying times. And how we come out of this on the other side is really going to determine if we exist as this concept called America anymore. The United States is in some difficult times right now, and I don't want to be political. I just want to talk about what's going on and have it somehow be relatable to business and cannabis. But these issues are so big, you can't not talk about them. But maybe we can still include it into what does it have to do with being part of the cannabis community, and what can you do, you as a member of the cannabis community, how can you contribute to society so we don't live in a society where cops are shooting citizens and citizens are shooting cops. Although to my understanding, the last 2 violent outbreaks of officer shootings were done by military personnel. I haven't heard too much media talking about or focusing on that yet. I have a suspicion that there's going to be some underlying issues of PTSD, either directly, indirectly, or somehow related to military personnel, with no other way of saying it, going batshit crazy and killing people, even if they are cops. I mean, if you live in an urban environment, 6 months ago you came back from Iraq or Afghanistan or some other shithole in the world where not good things are happening in an urban environment, and then all of a sudden you're walking down the street and you're faced in a hostile, intense situation of armed officers approaching you, and you're suffering from PTSD? Could there be a psychological snap there that happens where our men in blue are perceived to be the enemy in red because of their actions and their approach, and that these soldiers coming back from these hot zones aren't properly being diagnosed and treated and integrated into society? Or is it just simply saying somebody's angry and they went out and shot some cops? That's an easier narrative, right? If you're doing a news clip, it's just easier to say that Black Lives Matter are angry, so they just went out and shot cops, or somebody finally got to the breaking point of police abuse, so they went out and shot a cop. Well, that would be easy, because then it allows for the narrative to continue of the black and white. And don't pardon that pun, because I'm making a direct metaphor here, that the black and white situation is not as easy as person A did this because of this, or person B did this because of this, right? If it were as easy as just saying, well, these cops are racist, so they kill people, then it's real easy to say, well, then these people got mad, so they came back and killed the cops, right? And then the war continues, nothing ever gets solved. And then basically we are making our home country a Afghanistan, Iraq type situation. We're militarizing ourselves under our own terror and an escalation of violence. So let's get crazy in our theories about what's going on. Let's take a multiple view stance, that it's not just this or that, that maybe it's many of thises and many of that's that are creating what's going on. You know, I've dealt with cops most of my life, and mostly I would say in a negative situation. The only personal relationship I have to any officer of the law would be my grandfather, who was a deputy sheriff for his whole career, 30 plus years. I do have family in the military, and growing up from a teenager, I was a troublemaker. I had a lot of police interaction. I'm going to be transparent. I am not a very favorable person when it comes to police officers, because I am personally biased. I have personally had, I would say, more negative experiences and interactions than positive, despite my own wrongdoings, right? Despite that, I would still say the overall organization of the fraternal brotherhood, the fraternal order, the police of the United States, I would say they are a violent gang-like organization. However, despite that, I do not approve of shooting them. Not cool. That's my official stance. That's the stance I, as a citizen, and I, as a podcaster representing CCP, is going to take, that this is not cool. And let me tell you why. Because it's an escalation versus a de-escalation of violence. And I am a Aikidoka, which means I'm a practitioner of Aikido. So I am attempting to incorporate into my life a search for peace. And in this pursuit of trying to bring peace to myself and to the world around me, I can't possibly condone an escalation in violence as a way to retaliate against violence, because it never stops the violence. It only escalates it. And then you have countries that were formerly the ones we used to talk about, talking about us, saying that United States fighting for the last 50, 60, 100 years amongst themselves, right? Like how we talk about other countries. That's going to be us. So we have to be able to find a way to de-escalate the violence. De-escalate the violence does not mean being a pussy and giving in. It just means being a little bit smarter, right? Being a little bit smarter. And maybe I'm thinking about this because coincidentally last night on my Netflix queue, I was watching Straight Outta Compton, and one of the scenes really stuck with me when Eazy-E got beat down by Suge Knight, and he went to his business partner's house, his manager, the white guy, right? The man, the establishment. And he told him he was going to kill him, he was going to take him out. And his manager had to counsel him and say, no, no, no. You do that, your problems begin, his end. How is that payback? The way to get them is not through violence. It's through the legal system, the law, and their pocketbooks. Those are the only two things people respond to. If you can hit them in the pocketbook, things start to happen. So this is what we got to do. We have to change the legal structure that allows for individuals to bring recourse in the sense of a grievance, complaint, or even legal action against officers personally. And those officers should not be able to use tax-funded money or police-supported union money for personal suits that are civil-based. And when somebody wins against an officer, that payment should not come out of taxpayer money, nor from any other source other than that police fraternal order retirement fund. Now we start to hit them in the pocketbooks. And then we make laws that allow people to sue the shit out of them. Laws that allow investigations to be open until conclusions are come to by third parties and multiple people rather than just a single ruling class within the organization like they have now. And many, many other things to change the overall structure. We change the structure, we start to hurt them financially. I guarantee you things will change without an escalation in violence. Of you shot me, I'm going to shoot you. Oh, well, then I guess that gives your son right to come back and shoot me. Well, then I guess that gives my son right to come back and shoot him. Well, I guess that gives his grandson right to come back and shoot. It's the Hatfields and the McCoys, right? So let's be a bigger man in the sense we're just going to be smarter. We're not going to give up the fight. We're just going to attack you where we know we can hurt you. And you have shown us that as an organization of violence, it is very difficult to physically attack the police force. Their main function is to perpetrate physical force onto society. So attacking that with physical force would be a pretty stupid maneuver just from a pure art of war standpoint, right? I mean, if we're talking about a philosophical art of war standpoint, you don't go up to Mike Tyson and say, put up your dukes, let's box it out. You want to fight Mike Tyson, you don't go fist to fist. That guy's been practicing his whole life going fist to fist. You get him somewhere else. And I think that's what the last 20 years has done to Mr. Tyson, which is why he's practically a very different man today than he was then. So police officers can change, not because we're going to somehow intimidate them with physical violence, make them scared to do their job. All we're going to do is fuel the flames. Let's make them scared to lose their retirement. Let's make them scared to lose their job and not get hired anywhere else. Let's make it where once you're fired as a police officer, it would be illegal for any other department to hire you based on these grounds of being fired. And we have a list, a very short list of reasons of why officers can get fired where they cannot be hired in any form of policing work, including security. Make somebody scared to lose their mortgage payment and their wife due to not being able to pay Friday night dinner anymore, and all of a sudden you have a man that considers the consequences of his action. So that's just my opinion. I'm sure you have a different opinion. And this show is here, just express opinions and share them back and forth. So if you have an opinion and you want to get on this show and talk about it, contact me personally. Brainstorm at CannabisCommunityProject.com. But it's not all about gloom and doom and politics. Sometimes we learn some stuff. Just like in this week's show with THC Legal Group, and just like we did with last week with Jay Griffin, the owner of Dink Recreational Medical Dispensary, 3835 Elm Street here in Denver. Let's take a quick listen to our last week's short-term memory flashback relapse, learn all about what it takes to run a dispensary, and then move on forward to this week. Here we go, Cannapreneurs. Grind and burn. All right, let's do an update. So the Dink Update Insider.
I want to talk about the ganja yoga.
Okay, let's do that. What's the update on that? What do you got?
Yeah, we're proud to announce that Dank and Denver Consulting Group and Twisted Sister Yoga are all combining to offer weekly yoga classes called Ganja Yoga at Twisted. There's now another one scheduled for September 23rd. It's peak of fall colors, same ranch. There's a lot of cabin space available, as well as additional and limitless tent camping. So that allows us to make it as big as we want. Please sign up for that outreach plan. It's called Chime. Yeah, we have it at CHIME, Chime. And it is a rewards-based program. It's really great. It is spreading and it is continuing to gain acceptance nationwide. More and more conditions are being recognized as beneficial. And we're just talking about the cannabis side of it and the medicinal side of it, but there's great potential with the CBDs as well as industrial hemp. Some of these incredible facilities are being built too around the state. Pueblo, Trinidad, Salida, outside the city of Denver, people are constructing massive grow facilities with the most cutting edge technology and are looking like commercial pharmaceutical plants. And it's very exciting, but at the same time, they're growing in such quantity that prices are going to start coming down as far as wholesale pricing. Like, it's hard to get the following, I think, and it takes a champion within the company really to spearhead these things. And with so much going on, just trying to stay within the regulatory framework, it's hard to not think about that. But, that might alleviate some of that cash problem. Yeah, we have a bank. I mean, there's a few banks out there that we do business with, so we move our cash offsite super quickly, and that's one of the security measures that we've put in place here to safeguard our employees as well as the cash on hand. We have a bank account, so we're writing checks. I remember when we were counting payroll and cash, and that was the biggest problem. But it was also a vulnerable kind of day when you're doing payroll.
Oh, yeah. It's like a construction site, right? And end of Friday, it was the cash. Everybody coming off that construction site and getting paid in cash under a table. Cool, man. That was a good long update. There's a lot of stuff there I can use. That was excellent. You want to do a little out?
This is Jay Griffin with Dank, Colorado. Thanks for listening. Please join us for Ganja Yoga every Thursday at Twisted at Denver Consulting Group.
Excellent.
Hey, Cannapreneurs, are you inspired by the stories you hear? Maybe it's time for you to tell your own story. Do it right here on this show, CannabisCommunityProject.com, or email me personally, brainstorm at CannabisCommunityProject.com.
We have a big following now, and we just want to keep our following in the right places too. We want our following to listen, because it's like you don't want to give your friend like bad weed or like bad food or something, So we really want to give it back to our followers, because if it wasn't for our followers, then we wouldn't be in a lot of those places if they weren't talking about us and saying good things. So like we want our followers to like follow the right radio show. So all my followers, all teammates followers, or music followers, make sure you guys tune in to CCP Cannabis Community Radio, because this looks like it's going to be our home radio for weird music.
Yep.
Surprisingly, you guys have way better weed than One Blunt Radio too. Not to talk shit, but
Yeah.
I'm like way higher off. Like
This weed is some of the best weed I've smoked in a while.
I go to One Blunt and I'll take a couple dabs and I'm good. I'm faded, but like I literally hit that green crack one time and I didn't even know like what my name was.
This weed comes free with every guest corresponding.
You hear that, artist? So reach out.
And it's produced in-house by one of our
And it's amazing.
employees.
See, and think about that. Like that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to literally not have nothing corrupted. There's no spraying anything on your weed. It's like literally grown. Like it's perfect. Everything's working out perfectly. Like the rebuilding of weird has been a beautiful one.
Yes.
All right.
Travel all state, place where I can let my faith take hold. And my river's pretty head, make sure that I'm not dead. By 48, by 48, by 48, by. I can let our name be known. With my real pretty head, make sure that I'm not dead. By 28, by 28, by 28, by my head's a loaded gun. And I gotta go get them one. My head
better chickadee check yourself before you riggedy wreck yourself.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Abe Cohn. I'm the COO of THC Legal Group. We're a legal practice devoted to the cannabis industry, and of course we bring a unique expertise in that we're focused specifically on protecting intellectual property. So that includes patents, trademark, copyright, and other licensing agreements. We're located in Cleveland, Ohio, but, interestingly, with intellectual property, much of the law is governed federally instead of on a state-to-state level. So many of our clients are located throughout the country and indeed throughout the world.
Cool. Cleveland's right there, I guess, in the middle of the country, so I guess logistically it's a pretty good place to be at.
Yeah. Well, Cleveland also is kind of in a very unique position right now, or Ohio, I should say, because Governor Kasich only, like a month and a half ago, finally passed a bill that would recognize medical marijuana. So starting sometime in December, maybe the 15th or the 16th, it's going to be medical marijuana is coming to Ohio.
Celebration time. Is your law firm specifically a cannabis-focused legal practice?
Yeah, so THC Legal Group is a subsidiary of a larger intellectual property law firm, and our practice group specifically deals with cannabis.
Okay, so you're working underneath a bigger firm, but as a group that's specializing in the cannabis industry.
Right. The whole firm specializes in intellectual property, and this subsidiary, THC Legal Group, specializes in cannabis as far as it pertains to intellectual property.
Now, throughout this conversation, I may ask you to clarify certain vocabulary words and understanding of intellectual property. As you can imagine, most people don't have a vast understanding of how intellectual property works. Many people have heard terms like intellectual property, so forgive me if I sound like a child almost asking you some questions, but I think this is very important, especially in this industry, because as an emerging industry, there's going to be a lot of people coming forth with their own products and ideas and inventions and everything under the sun that you can think of. So there's going to be a need for what you're doing. So let's first establish some of the basics. Can you give me maybe like a 5 bullet point understanding of what it means when we say intellectual property?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you just mentioned, people who are starting businesses have ideas. And what's interesting about an idea is that it is, at least in its earliest stages of conception, contained only within the mind of the person who thinks it. So, it's just a thought. You have this idea that, X can be better or Y should be invented. But meanwhile, no one sees this idea. No one can touch it or feel it, smell it. It just exists in that person's kind of own psychology. So when we talk about intellectual property, we're talking fundamentally, at least in the beginning stages, about a certain intangible good, service, process, something that is not quite material. And yet we still want to make sure, as a civilized society, that the person who discovers that idea or who generates it should be allowed or afforded some sort of protection. So when we talk about intellectual property, we're talking about legal devices and methods to protect those intangibles.
And this could be anything from actual patents on tangible items all the way to ideas that are written down in text form like copyrights.
That's exactly right. So you can think of intellectual property as a process going along a spectrum. So on the most extreme tangible form, you have the patent side, where people are developing inventions. In the beginning, the person who thought of the car, the most earliest rendition of the automobile, in his own mind, he kind of had some idea that maybe we could harness energy and use it to propel forth some sort of vehicle. Who knows exactly what he was thinking in that moment, right? And of course, after he thought it, he decided presumably to write it down in some way. And then after he wrote down the idea, he probably drew some sketches. And after he drew some sketches, he wrote some claims or some explanation that went through how the automotive process would actually come to fruition. So the gap between when that person thought of the idea and when that first moving vehicle made its way to the road, the car at that point didn't quite exist. But that doesn't mean that person should not be able to protect that unique idea. So with a patent, we're trying to give people protection for something that may not quite exist in the real world yet, but is at least kind of along its way in a far enough scratch. And then on the other side, like you mentioned, copyrights are an excellent example of this. Someone develops a song or a poem or a book or, something. They're just words, thoughts that are on paper, but meanwhile, someone came up with them. They deserve to be afforded the rights due to them because of their kind of unique idea. And so we give them a copyright and we prevent other people from using that same idea.
Now, is this the type of law that you have to have a lawyer do? This is not something like a small claims court that maybe you could muscle your way through by reading some online websites. Intellectual property is something that you have to have an attorney, right?
Well, it depends. I mean, certainly with a patent, yeah, you have to have an attorney. And unlike other sorts of law, which is to a large extent developed based on templates and pre-made forms, patents are quite literally written from scratch. So you really have to know what you're doing, and it's not something that you can download from the internet and just kind of plug and play with your own pieces of information. But trademarks are, again, technically an individual who's not a lawyer might be able to do it themselves, but, these things require a lot of insight. You have to search to see if someone else is already using that trademark. You have to know where to search. So there's kind of a big base of experience that you really need in order to ensure that you're maximizing your protection.
And these databases that a lot of law firms subscribe to is really what you're paying for, because they're paying the monthly fee that's very expensive, but it's the monthly fee that gives you access to all that research information. So it's...
Yeah. It's also about asking the right question. So for example, intuitively you must know that you could not take the Nike swoosh logo and put it on a pair of pants that you just created, right?
Right.
So that seems obvious to us. But you really have to understand the mechanics and the theory behind why you cannot do that in order to kind of take that intuition and project it onto a more obscure example. So it might seem obvious to you that you're not allowed to use the Apple computer symbol on a new piece of computer equipment that you're developing, but it's not so clear that you're not allowed to use Apple maybe on flying kite. So why is that? So attorneys, trademark attorneys, good IP attorneys will have the proper understanding, project out this theory into the real world and hopefully help clients secure their IP and, of course, make sure they're not wasting money trying to get IP for something that's inherently non-protected.
And what you want in an attorney is just that, somebody who is able to ask the right questions, know kind of what's going to happen before you do so they can save you money, even though they're probably charging you a high amount of fees themselves. Can you ballpark what an average patent takes as far as money and time?
Yeah, well, there are different types of patents. So there are mechanical patents and certainly an engine. What's interesting, I think that's actually a really great question, because what's so interesting about being in a technologically driven era, like we most certainly are in 2016, there is just a massive overlap between what would traditionally be highly segmented types of patents. So before you might have a mechanical patent, then an electronics patent, chemical patent, plant patent, software patent. But as you can imagine, as the technology is kind of ever seeping into everyday life and all other mundane objects, it's harder to distill one from the other. But nevertheless, look, the price of a patent really varies on the firm that you're going to. And of course, the size of the patent, what types of claims it has, how big the process is. A patent for a Microsoft computer chip would cost substantially more than a patent for a toothbrush holder that allows your palm to rest more easily on the handle, right?
What type of playing field are we on? Are we talking about thousands, millions?
Yeah. So I would imagine that it would be challenging to find a good patent, written for under $6,500, and it can go all the way up, depending on just how sophisticated the tool is. So, imagine if someone wanted to patent a new air filtering system for a rocket ship that never came out. What does that air filtering system look like? What are the drawings for it consist of? How many pieces does it have? And as that pertains to the cannabis industry, one of our clients is developing proprietary lighting technologies that facilitate the growth of the herb in a much faster time frame with less dangers associated with excessive heat. So, the short answer is, and this answer always sucks, but it depends.
Did you just give away your clients' secrets there on this patent?
The short answer is it all depends.
Let me ask you this, because I know this is going to be a question that you probably get a lot, and I know most people in this industry have this question, so let's just get it out of the way up front. Does the U.S. government hold a patent on some type of cannabis, and can a plant or a strain be patented?
Okay, all very interesting questions. Okay, we just had this phone call today, actually. A client was interested in this. And I don't necessarily feel too comfortable speaking that specifically about this because it's a lot of complexity. But I will say this. As a general rule, with all sort of IP protections as it pertains to cannabis, the farther away removed you are from the herb itself, the greater the likelihood you can get protection. And the corollary to that, the flip side of that coin, is that the closer you are to the herb itself, the more difficult it is to secure protection. So as that pertains to trademarks, for example, you might certainly be able to get a trademark on some sort of related good. So if you're an edibles company, you might have a challenging time getting a trademark specifically on a cannabis product. But what you could do is you could get a trademark on another good that you developed, and then you piggyback off of your protection for that good to encompass your cannabis item too. So as a very practical matter, just as I said earlier, the closer you are to naming the cannabis as the thing you want protection for, the greater the barrier. And so, of course, the strategy is to try to separate the two somehow.
But is there a black and white answer of can a plant be patented?
I think there is precedent. There's serious case law around that. I'm going to choose to not answer that question on the record, but I'd be happy to talk about it afterwards.
Okay. I will not submit these transcripts to the court afterwards.
Okay. It's a challenging question because, the law it really is kind of evolving. Well, this is a question we get all the time. What does the law say, right? But the reason why that's not necessarily a precise question is because when people think about the law, they kind of think about opening up some big leather-bound book, turning to a page 1050, taking their finger and pointing in the middle of the page and saying, that's the law. But that's not really how it works. It's much more dynamic because certainly with the United States, case law, which is where we look to precedent and to see how judges ruled in the past, is almost as determinative kind of text law. So that's why you end up with crazy decisions in the courts and you're like, well, how did this happen? Why didn't it turn out like this? I thought the law said this. So it's a much more dynamic process. And certainly with cannabis, which is the wild west of the law right now, with federal government saying X and a lot of states saying Y, it's a very complex issue.
So without giving any specifics of your clients, what type of people are you dealing with in this industry?
Sure. So we're dealing with companies that are traditionally, I would say, ancillary businesses to the cannabis. So as I mentioned, a lighting company that is cultivating a certain type of lighting solution that heats the plant up just at the right temperature, just for the right amount of time. And even though it's suitable, of course, specifically for cannabis, you could imagine it being used for other plants and horticulture as well. And then trademarks, we're working with a lot of interesting companies, an edibles company, a different company that's developing a tool that they want to use.
As of yet, there is no direct cannabis products as far as growers or dispensaries that are being represented in the industry.
We're working right now, actually, on, I don't want to jinx us or give away too much, but, with Ohio legalizing cannabis for medicinal purposes, we are hopefully going to be working with a client in the very near future, depending how everything goes, to open up a dispensary in Ohio.
Nice. Now, as a law firm doing intellectual property law in the cannabis industry, does it matter where you are physically located geographically?
Right. The short answer is no. So the way it works is, there are, of course, two bodies of law governing the United States, or people in the United States. There's federal law, which transcends state law. Everyone is affected by it. And then there is, of course, state law. And traditionally, when lawyers practice law, they take a bar or a test for the given state that they want to practice in. And that is the state that they are allowed to practice law in. So forgetting intellectual property for the moment, in the event that a lawyer in the state of Florida wants to do some work for some lawyer in the state of California, what they can do is become some sort of counsel and hover, so to speak, under the umbrella of the Florida law firm, and that way they have limited practice rates in the state of California, even though that we're registered in Florida. But intellectual property law is different because much of intellectual property law, certainly patents, trademarks, which are done at the federal level, are governed by federal law. So you don't necessarily need to be in a particular state in order to file those applications.
So for federal intellectual patent law, you can be anywhere, but if you're doing some type of specific state localized law, you need to be under the license of somebody within that state.
That's precisely right.
I guess similar to if you were a realtor or a mortgage broker or an insurance agent, you have to work under somebody with a license, but they have multiple quote-unquote non-licensed people still doing the same work. They're just not the license holder.
Right. And, many people have criticized criticize the Bar Association for this. They think it's a cynical way for states to regulate the number of attorneys they have. But of course, there is some logic to it. I mean, if you're the state of California, you want to make sure that the residents of California have access to the marketplace in California, and you don't want people from Florida coming in stealing business from California attorneys. So there's a good argument on both sides, I think.
A side question, or a sidebar, if I can use your lingo.
Sure. Yeah.
Who does that benefit regulating the number of attorneys, the people or the attorneys?
Well, both. Again, it depends how cynical you want to be about it. If you're, but just imagine this. If you're just a person in California, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you're a person in California and there are 1,000 California attorneys. Now, all of a sudden, 50,000 attorneys come rushing in from every other state. And everywhere you look, there are lawyers. Is that really a good thing? I don't know. I mean, how should one spread out the nature of the professional landscape in a given state? But again, I don't know. These are questions for a moral philosopher more than someone interested in cannabis law. So, yeah, I can see a good argument on both sides, honestly.
I guess like anybody, it depends on what the goal is at the end of the day.
Yeah.
If you're looking at just a supply and demand issue, more attorneys would result in cheaper, more access and more abundance of legal maneuvering. So that might benefit society, but then lawyers don't make as much money.
Right. Would people care? Would people want to be, at a certain point, there would be a tipping point and lawyers would say, you know what, this profession, it no longer makes sense for me to go to law school and spend all this money. There are a million other attorneys we're all hustling for the same business, So the market, I think, would adjust itself inevitably, but it's an interesting question, without a doubt.
Well, let's transition from the moral and philosophy of the abundance of lawyers into the morals of becoming a cannabis specialist lawyer, because I'm quite curious to your transition, the motivation of what motivated you, and I'm also curious to your immediate network or your family, your friends, your coworkers, of how that transition transpired and was accepted. So if you can tell us a little bit of your backstory, about how did you get to a cannabis lawyer? What happened there?
I would just like to clarify, I'm not technically a lawyer myself. I think is relevant here to the last question. The traditional complaint against lawyers is that there is kind of a massive disconnect between the legal question of the issue and kind of the human side of it. Many people feel that lawyers, and this complaint has been alleged against doctors as well, that lawyers have somehow lost touch with the human component of the interaction. And when people deal with lawyers, they just see some intimidating person with a stack of documents that's going to charge them a lot of money.
Yes.
But they kind of lose sight of what it means for a person who has a real issue he needs help, So this is a big issue. So one of the things that I think is really special about what we're doing at THC Legal Group is that me personally, I'm just managing the business side of it, the operations side of it, much of the policy side that kind of undergirds some of our philosophy. And then, we have the lawyers who are kind of really specializing. But a lot of times clients who just interact only with the lawyers, I think are missing a big part of it, and it's really unfortunate. But as far as your initial question, we get this question a lot, do you really want to be part of a movement that just injects, weed into society? Is this a good thing? And we always ask those critics, to consider the flip side of that question, which is, do you really want to be throwing people in jail for using cannabis? And then when you look at it that way, the question kind of takes on a new form. So, we really are pushing a strong libertarian ethos. We don't necessarily encourage people to use cannabis, but we certainly don't want the government telling them they are not allowed to.
Okay. Was there something that brought you to this industry personally, on a personal level?
I'm very interested in libertarian policies, very interested in constitutional law, the role of government and how people should be interacting with the government and what type of rights individuals should have. So when you just look at kind of the landscape of America and sort of resources that are being depleted kind of on a massive scale. If you look at the jails, it's just very obvious that the war on drugs has been a failure, and cannabis certainly is one of the easier ones to say, let's be done with it.
And that's probably the best way to get into the industry, is just from a good, practical, pragmatic standpoint of what's best for society.
Yeah.
I'm just glad you didn't tell me a heart-wrenching story of how somebody got sick and was terminally ill, and because that's normally the response I get when I ask that question. question. I try to ask that question to everybody I speak to so I can get my own personal research. And most people, I would say 8 times out of 10 are coming from the background of I got in the industry because myself or somebody I know got sick.
Right.
And
no, we hear that too. I know for us, that I feel very strongly about the role of government, what people should be able to do in their own homes, privacy issues, and I just think it's super important.
So is your group, your specialty subgroup, is this going to expand into a broader cannabis legal subgroup of a law firm?
Not necessarily, no. There's always this dilemma, jack of all trades, master of none. So we don't really want to be doing that. I mean, we come from a bigger law firm with a true expertise in IP, and that's kind of what we want to bring to the industry.
If I can go back to just the economics again, is there an outlook of, well, if we got involved in criminal law, there would be more market cap because there's going to be more criminals in cannabis versus maybe patents where there's a very small market? No?
I'm not sure that's true, though. I mean, look, yes, it's true. There might very well be more people who are facing criminal charges for cannabis and people who are inventing things that need a patent. But, you get into this industry, hopefully, because you have a real interest in it. So there is something, I think, particularly special and unique, certainly about patent law. And the expertise, I think, drives the market. So if we just said we're going to start taking on criminal law clients, well, people would say, well, what do you know? But with IP, we have a colossal amount of experience, unique experience, and I think that drives a good deal of the traffic and clients that are coming through our doors. So, it's a good model, which we're definitely going to be sticking with.
What would you say the average demographic as far as income level, background, age group of people who are wanting to get intellectual property in the cannabis industry?
Yeah, that is very interesting. A desire, I think, to get into it is happening at a much younger age, which isn't that surprising. I mean, you have younger people who are familiar with cannabis, they're thinking about cannabis, and they'd like to be part of the industry. Of course, like any business, and certainly this one, it takes a lot of money to get involved. So if you look at who our actual clients are, not a single one of them is below the age of 35.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's good, I guess, in a way, because it really reinforces the fact that the industry is not just about young stoners. The industry is a whole different demographic of people from an industry standpoint, not just a consumer standpoint, but an industry. So that's good to hear.
Right, yeah. Well, we went to this expo in Manhattan about 2 weeks ago, and I remember just walking down the escalator in the Javits Center. I had this feeling like, oh my God, wow, these are serious businessmen doing serious things who happen to be doing that serious thing with cannabis. But it did not feel like Cheech and Chong's basement, I think.
I've been to a number of events myself here in Colorado, and I would say less than 1% do I run into that type of scene, that Cheech and Chong kind of scene.
Right.
But, like anything, you will find what you're looking for. So if that's what you're looking for, I'm sure it's out there in abundance. And
definitely.
Let's take a hypothetical. So I walk into your office and I say, hey, I got a few $1,000s and I'm trying to start this business, and here's my product. What is the reality of me needing to protect my intellectual property in the startup stage? And I'm not saying as somebody who's looking at it through the lens of that's what you do, but look at it through the lens of just a general business person starting up, because I hear a lot of conflicting ideas about where intellectual property has its role. Some people think it's up front, some people think it's at the end, and by the end I don't mean years and years down the line. I just mean before going into a different exit strategy that's either a broader market or something else.
Yeah.
What can you tell us?
Right. Let's take a hypothetical that I think is maybe more plausible. Let's say someone doesn't have $5,000 to their name, but maybe they have $50,000 to their name, and they have an amazing business idea. Maybe they raise a little bit of funding. I'm not sure, some angel investor. So the way to think about intellectual property is to think of it as both an offensive measure and as a defense. So earlier we were speaking about it, I think, offensively. We were saying, I'm going to secure this, and now this belongs to me. And there's something nice about that. But the defensive measure would be, I already have a trademark or patent on this. Now over there, I see someone using it, I'm going to thrust up my IP protection as some kind of, as both a spear and a shield at the same time, and stop that guy from taking something that I already have registered as belonging to myself. So that's kind of the high level. IP is really a right to sue and a right to prevent. Right. You're saying that this thing belongs to me, and you're saying to the future person that you're not allowed to use it. Depending on what your idea is and the nature of the business that you're starting, of course, we would, like we mentioned before, there are different kind of avenues of protection that you might want in the intellectual property space. But I think one of the most important things on a very practical level, without a doubt, one of the most important things is trademark protection. So you're starting a brand name, you're starting a new company, you want to get a trademark on your name, on tagline, on your logo, your graphic. It's just super important. And that's one of the things to recommend. It's not very expensive, and given the protection that you get, it's entirely worth it.
Well, the trademark makes sense because it's more likely somebody will infringe your trademark than actually infringe a pending patent or something in that sense. I mean, if somebody has the money and resources to create a product that's going to compete with your patent, they probably have enough resources to make sure it's, side skirting the legal. Right. In that sense. And I look at it kind of like quicksand, where once you get involved in the IP world, it's one of those things you have to keep up with because it's not a one-time. I mean, please correct me if I ever say anything wrong, but it's not a one-time thing where once I file my patent, then I just sit back and for the rest of my life, nobody can infringe on me. It's one of those things that you have to constantly be out there looking to see what's going on in the market. And if somebody is infringing, you have to take action, because if you don't take action, that could be turned back against you as showing that, hey, you weren't actually upholding your own trademark or your own whatever.
With trademarks, that's absolutely true. There's kind of a very bizarre subfield of law that deals with the loss of a trademark. So if it turns out that other people are using your trademark and you don't do anything about it, you could actually lose it. Trademarks are meant to do, which is serve as a source identifier. If there's so many other companies using that mark, then it's no longer a source identifier, right? It seems intuitive that you could lose it for that reason. Patents are a little bit different. I wouldn't necessarily say that you lose it because you're not stopping someone else. But one thing that you would certainly want to remain vigilant as an offensive measure. You want to be looking out for licensing opportunities potentially. You see people using it, you say, hey, fine, listen, unless you license it from me, you can't do it anymore. So, and that's the way people are making money without a doubt. It's a fascinating field. So there's so many different things to consider with it.
In my little business of just running my own little radio podcast here, and I have my own identity and I have my own logo and I have things that signify and distinguish who I am, but I don't really have any resources where if somebody with deep pockets came along and wanted to basically just reproduce what I was doing, I would have no real resources to stop them from doing that.
And that is a criticism on the legal system in general. What does the little man do when a Goliath with endless access to legal counsel just bullies them kind of out of the marketplace?
Well, this actually might come up in the next couple of years, as I'm sure you heard about last week, Microsoft coming out with their seed-to-sale tracking system.
Oh, I did hear about this.
So this might actually be a lawsuit that comes up because there's many people with seed-to-sale tracking software. You don't think one of them is going to accuse Microsoft of infringing on their existing product?
Yeah, I don't know the particulars of that, but I think that is definitely a crystallized example of some of the fears that people have. Microsoft is just going to litigate them to the poorhouse. But of course, they might very well find legal counsel that's willing to do it on a commission basis or for a third. So there are avenues. I do see that as an issue, absolutely.
Or they just start buying everybody up and just dominate the market by just buying everybody up. Well, I mean, there's these are a lot of issues, and they're all kind of foundation infrastructure type issues when you think about a business. And I think a lot of people get so focused on their sales, which is very, very important, but they forget about the infrastructure and just any other infrastructure. If you forget about what's holding the building up, it doesn't matter how polished the floors are. If the building itself is crumbling, you don't have much of anything. And I think IP is one of those things. It's like having insurance. It's something you don't really think about.
It's like having insurance. That's it. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Something you don't think about. Definitely nothing that's sexy to talk about, and something that most people don't want to pay for or even have on their itemized, expenditure list. But it's definitely something that if you're going to be in business where you have products and trademarks and everything else, you just you got to talk to a lawyer, right? I mean, nowadays, can you be in business without a lawyer?
But also, I would say even more than that too. If you're, and we see this a lot with younger companies who are just desperate to raise money they need IP in order to show investors that they do, in fact, own this thing that they're trying to get. In that sense, it's also another offensive measure. VCs, they want to know that you own the patent to whatever it is that you're trying to get them to put their money in.
It's an asset, right?
It's an asset. It is very much so a piece of property that you want to own.
And that's actually a very good point that I hadn't quite really focused on myself, because a lot of what I try to do is help mom and pop entrepreneurs kind of get themselves into the market, and being able to establish some trademark and some copyright may not actually do much in bringing a lot of profit to you, but it definitely does a lot as establishing a credible asset for your business. That you're the real deal. You're in business. You're a real business here.
It confers legitimacy where you would otherwise not have it.
I don't know if there's any evidence that shows having IP will increase profits by X amount of dollars, but I think we can, without data, pretty much confirm that it will increase your credibility and your legitimacy as being in business.
And I can say this with 100% certainty that people investing in your business, or at least reputable firms, venture capitalist firms, companies, they will not give you money unless you can show that you own the thing, whatever that thing is.
Well, speaking of venture capital firms and angel investors, are you allowed by law or by company ethics to be involved financially with the companies you represent?
Yeah, there is actually a very interesting kind of body of law that governs how lawyers are allowed to intersect with the companies that they are representing. Well, in addition to a lawyer taking the bar, they also take what's called the professional ethics test, basically, some professional rules of responsibility. But the idea is that at the most fundamental level, the lawyer needs to be providing not only competent representation, but they also need to be providing ethical representation. And once they do something that might compromise either of those two things, there are potentially grounds for disbarment. So how a lawyer goes about ensuring that he is both a part of the project without infringing on either of those two superseding responsibilities, I think is tricky.
But is that part of the business model you're involved in, your subset?
Generally, no.
Okay.
Generally, no. It's bad for us, I think, for two reasons. One, as a general business practice, we don't want to become partners with our companies. They're hiring us to represent them. And also, as I was saying, I think you do really run a risk of potentially not doing something that is 100% in the client's interest when your own interests are at stake. It's never a position that a lawyer or an ethical lawyer wants to be in.
Right. And I think the best way to relate it, since we're talking about drugs, is don't get high off your own supply. And if if you're a representing lawyer for your client, but you're also an investor in that client's business, you're kind of getting high off your own supply, which is going to create faulty judgment.
You're straddling a shaky horse.
Will you consider investing in the cannabis industry in general, in other products and companies that emerge through either crowdfunding or other forms of public offerings? Will you yourself be an investor in this industry?
I don't know. You know what? I haven't even considered that.
Okay, interesting. This is great, man. We've talked a long time, and I can't think of another question that doesn't cover the scheme of what we're doing. Is there any questions or things you wanted to get out there that we didn't touch on?
I think we really covered the gamut. We went over different kind of constitutional claims of privacy and self-governance to warrant legalization. We talked about intellectual property. We talked about different pragmatic types of considerations new companies need to be thinking about when getting into the business. And we talked about lawyers, ethics, and moral philosophy. So I think this was an amazing conversation we had.
Well, that was a pretty good recap. We don't have to get it all out now because these shows are pretty much open offer shows. So you're more than welcome to come back on anytime in the future and continue talking about specific topics or subjects or current events related to what you're doing. I'd be more than happy to have you come back anytime. If something happens in the industry that you think is worth talking about, send me a message and we'll jump back on the phone again and we'll talk about it.
Oh, I'd really appreciate that. Yeah. If you have any questions and you're looking for some free legal advice, please call us and I will make sure you get hooked up.
Now, are you saying me or to the audience out there? Because you don't want to throw that out to the audience.
Well, you know what? Any audience members who want a free consultation, I'm going to extend that offer right now too.
Let's make sure people know where to get a hold of you, because I'm sure, matter of fact, I know there are people who are going to hear that, and everybody needs a lawyer. So making an offer like that could be dangerous. But go ahead and give your contact information. So anybody who's not a nut job out there who has a serious conversation or question that wants to talk to you.
Sure.
And I guess you've heard some pretty crazy ideas in relation to people probably starting businesses and product ideas.
We are a non-judgmental law firm, and people can call us, tell us their ideas, and we want to hear each and every one of them.
Yeah, you probably can't go to a party and tell somebody what you do without getting a whole list of people's ideas, right?
So the first question I get is, when can you get me some? And I have to explain to them that is not the business that I am in.
I have one more question, though, that I have to get out there.
Oh, sure.
Because this one kind of annoys me at the same time. Okay. Talk about NDAs, non-disclosure agreement, in the relevance of I meet you at a party and you want to tell me your billion-dollar idea. Do you really need to pull out an NDA and make me sign it to tell me about your idea?
Okay, so I would say two things about that. From the client's point of view, from the guy who has the $1 million idea, I would just say, you know what? Don't say it. Just don't say it. If you think that that attorney can help you that much, call him on Monday and go in and speak to him. Similarly, from the attorney's side, I would say, you know what? Just make sure that guy knows that he's not a client of yours. You have no formal relationship with him. He's just a dude. You're a dude or a woman, and she's a woman, and you're there, and you're just talking. So that's kind of, I think, the right, safe way to do it.
And would that be the same recommendation for non-attorney? Because I'm not talking about you meet an attorney at a party. Joe meets John at a party and is like, hey, man, what are you doing? Hey, I'm thinking of the $1 billion cannabis idea. You want to hear about it?
Okay, all the more so. And as the producer of the idea, you have even less protection or recourse. So in that event, do not tell anyone. In fact, the first thing that you should be doing is writing it down, having some material form of your idea that could perhaps ultimately show primacy of the idea at a later date. So if you're at a party and you have a great idea and no one knows about it, don't tell anyone.
That is great advice. And the reason I asked that question is because last week here in Denver, the Shark Tank show. So Damon John has his team, right? His team that goes around the country to different cities, and they're trying to build this off-camera kind of Shark Tank type interaction where they can start lead generating, business people and ideas and so forth.
Oh, okay.
And one of the things at this kind of Holiday Inn free, conference type thing was him saying, don't worry about NDAs if you're talking to an investor that's offering you millions of dollars, because there's nothing you're going to be able to do anyways. It's a waste of time. So either give it to them or don't give it to them. But having somebody sign an NDA to talk to them about your idea is almost a waste of time. Was kind of their attitude about it.
I think that's ridiculous. But remember, the only time this would matter is if you find yourself facing the other guy in a courtroom and you're trying to convince the judge of something, and you want to muster as much evidence and support as you possibly can to show that you are in the right and he's in the wrong. So clearly having an NDA, even if it's not a dispositive trump card, it's certainly way better than not having it. And it establishes a precedent that you're the one that came up with it. You made the other guy sign it. Now he's taking advantage. I think I would definitely urge people to use good common sense and produce the NDA.
Look at the person's end goals. Damon John and his team are looking to find the next $1 million idea. Your end goal is to protect people's IP. So I think on this one, I'm going to go with you because your end goal seems to be more in line with protection of IP.
It's like a boxing match or a UFC fight. The referee says in the beginning, protect yourself at all times.
There you go.
That's what we want to urge people to do.
Excellent. So if people contact you, can they make you sign an NDA?
Many people want us to sign NDAs, and we are happy to do so. And people can reach us at our website, of course, at www.thclegalgroup.com. Our Twitter handle is THC_group. And then people, can just contact my personal email address. I'm going to give that out there. It's just abe@thclegalgroup.com.
Very good. Thank you very much. Very informational and even a little inspirational, actually. I'm a little inspired.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, we love this industry. We love talking about it. We want people to succeed and really do well. So we are here to help.
Well, thank you. And please make sure to stay in touch with me.
Okay. Well, thank you again. I really enjoyed this. Have a great weekend.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay.
There there you have it, Cannapreneurs. That's all I have for you this week, but make sure to stay in touch with us. Stay with us on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google+, Twitter, all the networks out there, even Mass Roots and YouTube. Make sure to follow us every week right here. Leave your comments, give us your feedback, be on the show. We want to see you every week. This is your community, so make sure to come back. We'll see you next week.